Imagine the shadows of ancient Greece, where temples gleamed in marble sunlight. But beyond their sacred walls lurked terrors that haunted the human imagination. Where gods ruled Olympus and heroes carved their names into legend, monstrous beings prowled the edges of myth. Serpentine creatures, half-beasts, winged terrors, and cursed souls. Tonight, you will step into that twilight realm. Where are you watching from? Is it morning in your home, or late at night when shadows stretch across your room? Wherever you are, whatever time the clock whispers, stay with me, and let us descend together into the world of Greek monsters. Medusa, the Minotaur, and the many beasts that tested the courage of gods and mortals alike. Main stories start here. Long before men tamed the seas or carved their empires in stone, the Greeks imagined that the universe was alive with forces both divine and dreadful. They believed monsters were not simply enemies of mankind, but symbols of chaos, punishment, and forgotten ages. These creatures were born from primordial unions, cursed by the gods, or conjured as trials to test heroes. And yet, though terrifying, they carried meaning. Each beast a reflection of humanity's fears and desires. One of the most chilling figures in all Greek mythology was Medusa. She was not born a monster, but became one through a cruel twist of fate. The poets tell us that Medusa was once a maiden of astonishing beauty, her hair flowing in dark, silken waves, her face radiant enough to captivate gods. She served in the temple of Athena, sworn to chastity and devotion. But fate turned bitter when Poseidon, lord of the sea, desired her. In one account, he violated her within Athena's temple, defiling the sacred ground. The goddess, enraged not at Poseidon but at the mortal woman who bore the weight of this crime, punished Medusa with transformation. Her flowing locks twisted into venomous serpents. Her gaze, once filled with warmth, became a weapon of horror. Anyone who looked directly into her eyes was turned to stone, frozen forever in silent agony. Cast out from the world of men, Medusa became one of the three Gorgons, sisters with scales, wings, and monstrous fangs. Yet Medusa alone was mortal, destined to meet an end, unlike her eternal siblings. Medusa's lair was described as a place of desolation, littered with statues that had once been brave men, warriors who thought they could strike her down. They stood locked in eternal defeat, reminders of her curse. But even a monster as dreadful as Medusa could not escape destiny. For Perseus, son of Zeus and the mortal Danae, was tasked with her destruction. Guided by Athena and Hermes, armed with gifts from the gods, a mirrored bronze shield, winged sandals, and a blade sharp enough to cut through scales, Perseus set out to face the Gorgon. When he arrived at her cavern, he dared not look at her directly. Instead, he turned his eyes to the reflection on his shield, moving closer, silent as breath. Around him lay the evidence of her deadly power, frozen faces twisted in terror. The serpents in her hair hissed and writhed, sensing his presence. And then, in a swift strike, Perseus severed her head. From her blood, a miracle sprang. Pegasus, the winged horse, leapt into the air, born from Medusa's slain body, and Chrysaor, a warrior of golden sword, emerged as well. Even in death, Medusa gave birth to wonders. Perseus placed her head in a sack, for even severed, her gaze could still turn flesh into stone. He would later use it as a weapon, before offering it to Athena, who fixed it on her shield, the Aegis, a symbol of divine protection and terror. But Medusa was more than a monster slain. She was a tale of beauty twisted into dread, of victimhood transformed into a curse. To the Greeks, she embodied both fear and fascination, the dangerous allure of womanhood, the punishment of defying divine order, and the haunting truth that monstrosity is often born from cruelty. Yet Medusa was only one of many beings to haunt Greek imagination. Beneath the great palace of Knossos, on the island of Crete, another terror waited in labyrinthine darkness. This was the Minotaur, half man, half bull, a creature of brute strength and insatiable hunger. His origin lay in the arrogance of kings and the meddling of gods. Minos, king of Crete, once prayed to Poseidon for a sign of divine favor. The god answered by sending a magnificent white bull from the sea, a beast of such majesty that it seemed carved from snow and flame. Minos was meant to sacrifice it in gratitude, but his heart faltered. The bull was too perfect, too valuable, and he kept it for himself. To punish this deception, Poseidon cast a strange madness over Minos' wife, Pasiphae. She fell into unnatural desire for the bull, a curse that led her to conceive a monstrous child, the Minotaur, a being with the body of a man but the head of a raging bull. Ashamed of this abomination, yet unwilling to kill it, Minos sought a solution. The architect Daedalus built a labyrinth, a maze so cunningly designed that none who entered could find their way out. Here, the Minotaur was imprisoned, fed on sacrifices sent from Athens, young men and women doomed to wander the twisting halls until the beast devoured them. For years, this terror continued until a hero named Theseus rose to end it. With the help of Minos' daughter Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread to retrace his steps, Theseus entered the labyrinth. Step by step, he ventured deeper into the choking darkness, his hand trailing the thread, his heart pounding as the echoes of the beast drew closer. When the Minotaur finally appeared, it was a vision of primal fear, horns glinting, breath steaming, eyes burning with hunger. The struggle was fierce, but Theseus, armed with courage and skill, struck down the monster. He found his way back to the surface, guided by Ariadne's thread. And with that victory, Athens was freed from its tribute of blood. The labyrinth became a ruin, the Minotaur's legend immortalized as the triumph of reason and heroism over chaos and savagery. Yet the Greeks told of countless other beasts, each embodying a different fear. There was Cerberus, the three-headed hound that guarded the gates of Hades, whose slavering jaws allowed none to escape the realm of the dead. There was the Chimera, a fire-breathing horror with the body of a lion, the head of a goat rising from its back, and the tail of a serpent, a nightmare stitched from the parts of many animals. Heroes such as Bellerophon, mounted on Pegasus, sought to destroy it, their battles becoming echoes of humanity's fight against impossible odds. There was the Hydra of Lerna, a serpent with many heads, each one growing back doubled when severed. Hercules, in his labors, faced this horror, learning that only by searing each stump with fire could he stop its regeneration. The Hydra's blood, so venomous that even its breath poisoned the air, would later coat Hercules' arrows, ensuring his enemy's doom. And there were Sirens, who lured sailors with voices sweeter than any mortal song. Their melodies drifted across the sea like silk, promising paradise, only to dash ships against jagged rocks. Odysseus, cunning wanderer of the seas, stuffed his crew's ears with wax and tied himself to the mast to hear their song without succumbing. Their music, beautiful and deadly, symbolized the danger of desire itself. These monsters, whether serpents, bulls, or singers of doom, carried a deeper meaning. To the Greeks, they were not mere beasts to be slain, but metaphors for the struggles of life. Temptation, chaos, death, and the unknown. Heroes who faced them did more than fight flesh and bone. They wrestled with the shadows of the human soul. This section will cover Hydra, Chimera, Cerberus, Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, and other mythical beasts. The Hydra's lair was a swamp, reeking with decay, its waters thick with the poison that dripped from the creature's fangs. It was said that even the smallest breath from its many heads could blacken the grass and kill birds in flight. Hercules, guided by his cousin Iolaus, ventured into this choking mire. When one head fell to his blade, two more sprouted, writhing and hissing, snapping their jaws with relentless hunger. The hero soon realized that strength alone could not win. So he set torches to the wounds, searing each stump as it fell, and in fire, he found victory. Even so, the Hydra's legacy lingered. Hercules dipped his arrows in its black blood, creating weapons so deadly that wounds they inflicted could never heal. Later, in a tragic twist, it would be this same poison that brought about the hero's own suffering. Thus, the Hydra taught not only that chaos could be conquered, but that every victory bore a price. Cerberus, the hound of Hades, stood at another threshold, not the swamp of a serpent, but the gate of death itself. With 3 massive heads, a mane bristling like snakes, and a tail coiled from the body of a dragon, Cerberus was no ordinary beast. He allowed the dead to pass in, but never out. His growl was thunder, his bite unbreakable. Yet even he was not beyond the reach of heroes. Hercules, in one of his final labors, descended into the underworld itself to fetch the beast. There, in the land of shadows, he wrestled Cerberus with his bare hands, his muscles straining against the might of Death's guardian. Dragging the beast into the light of the living, Hercules proved that even the boundaries between life and death could be challenged. But Cerberus was not killed. He was returned to his post, for some monsters were eternal, not meant to perish, but to remind mortals of forces greater than themselves. If Cerberus symbolized death's unyielding gates, then the Chimera embodied the chaos of nature itself. It was born of Echidna, the half-serpent mother of monsters, and Typhon, the greatest terror of all. The Chimera's body was a cruel patchwork of creation, the chest of a lion, the back sprouting the head of a goat, and a tail that ended in a serpent's venomous strike. Its breath was fire, scorching the earth where it roamed. Towns and fields burned beneath its fury, and no man dared approach it. But Bellerophon, a mortal favored by the gods, mounted the winged horse Pegasus and rose into the sky. With bow in hand, he struck from above, avoiding the flames. In one version, he forced molten lead down the beast's throat, choking its fire and silencing its roar forever. These monsters, born from Echidna and Typhon, spread terror across the world. Echidna herself was said to dwell in the cave, half woman, half snake, her eyes glowing with hunger. Typhon, her mate, was a storm giant of unimaginable power, taller than mountains, whose 100 heads spat fire and whose wings blotted the sun. Even the Olympian gods trembled before him, fleeing to Egypt and disguising themselves as animals to escape his wrath. Zeus alone stood against Typhon, and their battle shook the heavens. Lightning clashed with flame, the earth splitting beneath their fury. At last, Zeus struck him down, hurling the monster beneath Mount Etna, where his rage still burns, sending fire into the sky. To the Greeks, every eruption was a reminder that Typhon yet writhed in chains. But not all monsters were born of fire and fury. Some dwelt in the sea, where sailors prayed to safe harbors and calm tides. Among them were Scylla and Charybdis, 2 perils that lurked on opposite sides of a narrow strait. Scylla had once been a beautiful maiden, desired by gods, but transformed into horror by jealousy. From her waist sprouted 6 serpentine heads, each with gnashing teeth, and her body bristled with the legs of monstrous dogs. She lurked upon the rocks, snatching sailors from their decks, devouring them alive. Across from her, Charybdis waited, once a daughter of Poseidon, cursed by Zeus to drink the seas. 3 times each day, she swallowed the waters whole, creating a whirlpool that dragged ships into her gullet. To sail between them was nearly impossible. Avoid one, and the other claimed you. Odysseus, on his long voyage, chose to steer closer to Scylla, sacrificing a few men rather than losing his entire ship to the abyss. Thus the phrase between Scylla and Charybdis entered Greek thought as a symbol of impossible choices, where danger lurks no matter the path. Even the skies above Greece were not free of monsters. Harpies, winged women with talons like iron, swept down upon their victims, snatching food from their mouths, leaving behind the stench of decay. They were agents of punishment, carrying souls to torment. Phineus, a seer cursed with blindness, suffered endlessly as the Harpies stole every meal from his table, until the Argonauts drove them away with the help of the Boreads, sons of the north wind. Then there was the Sphinx, a riddle-born terror from the land of Thebes. She had the body of a lion, the wings of a bird, and the face of a woman. Perched upon a rock, she challenged all who passed with her question: what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Those who failed to answer she tore apart with her claws. The city despaired, bound by fear, until Oedipus came. He answered with a single word: man, who crawls as an infant, walks upright in adulthood, and leans on a staff in old age. Defeated by truth, the Sphinx hurled herself from her perch and perished, leaving Thebes free. The Greeks saw in her not just a beast, but the trial of wisdom itself, a reminder that knowledge was as great a weapon as the sword. Monsters, in all their forms, carried lessons. They guarded sacred truths, punished arrogance, and forced heroes to grow. For every Medusa slain, every Minotaur defeated, there was a story of humanity confronting the fears that dwell in shadow. To gaze upon them was to gaze upon the unknown, the darkness within nature, the wrath of gods, and the frailty of man. Yet the Greeks did not always tell of monsters as foes alone. Some were protectors, guardians of sacred places. The golden-fleeced ram that carried Phrixus to safety became a constellation, honored in the sky. The Nemean lion slain by Hercules was immortalized as the hide he wore, impenetrable and everlasting. Even Perseus, born of Medusa's death, became a symbol of inspiration, carrying poets' dreams as much as heroes' spears. In this way, monstrosity and wonder intertwined, each creature a reminder that the world was vast, mysterious, and filled with powers beyond comprehension. And so, as the Greeks told their tales beneath starlit skies, around fires that flickered in the night, they did not merely whisper of beasts. They spoke of the human spirit, fragile yet unyielding. For in every monster's shadow, there was the light of a hero who dared to face it. Where I'll bring in more legendary creatures like the cyclopes, giants, satyrs, centaurs, and more. The Greek imagination was boundless, and not all monsters were confined to shadows or seas. Some roamed the earth itself, striding across mountains and fields, giants whose footsteps shook the ground. The Gigantes, the giants, were born of Gaia, the earth, in her rage against the Olympian gods. Towering, strong, and fierce, they waged war upon heaven itself, hurling boulders and burning trees against the thrones of Zeus and his kin. This conflict, known as the Gigantomachy, echoed the chaos of the Titanomachy before it, but with new terrors. Only with the help of mortal strength could the gods prevail. Hercules fought alongside the Olympians, his arrows tipped with Hydra's venom, felling the giants one by one. The Greeks carved their images into temple walls, showing gods and heroes united against overwhelming force. To them, giants symbolized rebellion, the eternal clash between order and chaos, and the truth that even the divine required mortal courage. The Cyclopes, too, strode through Greek myth, though they were not always foes. These one-eyed beings were smiths of immense power, dwelling in the depths of the earth. It was the Cyclopes who forged the thunderbolts of Zeus, the trident of Poseidon, and the helm of invisibility for Hades. Yet in Homer's Odyssey, they appear in darker form. Polyphemus, a monstrous shepherd, dwelled in a cave upon a lonely island. When Odysseus and his men sought shelter there, they found not hospitality but horror. Polyphemus devoured the sailors, one by one, his single eye blazing with cruelty. But cunning outmatched strength. Odysseus tricked the Cyclops, telling him his name was Nobody. After blinding him with a burning stake, the hero and his men escaped beneath the bellies of sheep. When Polyphemus called for aid, shouting that nobody was hurting him, his kin laughed and left him. Yet his curse endured, for he was the son of Poseidon, and his cry for vengeance brought storms upon Odysseus' journey. Thus, the cyclopes embodied both the gifts of creation and the dangers of brute force, a reminder that wisdom must temper might. Among the forests and mountains, other creatures lingered, half human, half beast, reflecting the untamed side of human nature. Satyrs, with goat legs and mischievous eyes, danced in Dionysian revels, chasing nymphs and playing their pipes. They were not monsters to slay, but symbols of wildness, temptation, and unrestrained desire. Alongside them roamed the centaurs, fierce and unruly, half horse and half man. At weddings they brawled, at feasts they fought, embodying both the nobility of the stallion and the violence of human passion. Yet not all centaurs were wild. Chiron, wise and noble, tutored heroes like Achilles, Jason, and Asclepius. He taught medicine, music, and the arts of war, proving that even creatures deemed monstrous could carry wisdom and virtue. The Greeks, in telling these tales, showed that monstrosity was not a matter of form, but of spirit. Other tales spoke of the Erinyes, the Furies, born from the blood of Uranus when he was cast down. With snakes for hair and eyes that wept blood, they pursued the guilty without mercy, tormenting those who shed kindred blood. Orestes, who avenged his father by killing his mother, was hunted relentlessly by their cries until Athena herself intervened, transforming their wrath into guardianship of justice. Here, too, we see how the Greeks wove terror into law, turning monstrous vengeance into divine order. Even the gods themselves could conjure monstrous forms. Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy, could drive men into madness, making them tear beasts apart with their bare hands. Apollo sent the Python, a great serpent, to guard Delphi until he slew it and claimed the oracle. Artemis loosed wild boars of impossible size, and Poseidon sent sea serpents to punish kings who defied him. Each beast carried divine purpose, instruments of lesson and wrath. But for all their horror, the monsters of Greece were not without allure. They invited wonder as much as fear. The phoenix, though not a Greek native but woven into later tales, became part of their mythic tapestry, a bird reborn from fire, symbol of immortality. The griffin, with the body of a lion and the wings of an eagle, guarded treasures in distant lands. The Greeks placed such creatures at the edges of maps, symbols of mystery, warning that the world beyond was filled with marvels and perils yet unseen. Monsters also served as guardians of sacred objects. The dragon Ladon coiled around the golden apples of the Hesperides, his 100 heads watchful against intruders. Jason and the Argonauts faced another serpent, sleepless and vast, that protected the golden fleece. With song, with guile, or with sheer might, heroes overcame these keepers, seizing the treasures they hid. The monsters were trials, but they also gave meaning to the prizes won. Without them, there was no glory, no tale to endure the centuries. At last, we return to the question, why did the Greeks fill their world with monsters? The answer lies in the very heart of myth. Monsters were more than beasts. They were the boundaries of human experience. They marked the line between life and death, order and chaos, knowledge and ignorance. They stood where the world turned dark, in caves, in seas, in shadows, places beyond human control. To face them was to face fear itself. To overcome them was to prove that courage, wit, and the favor of the gods could triumph even against the impossible. Medusa, the Minotaur, the Hydra, the Chimera, Cerberus, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, the Sphinx, the cyclopes, the giants, each in their way tested mankind. Some fell by the sword, others by the mind, and some could never be slain at all. But in every tale, heroes emerged transformed, stronger, wiser, more enduring. These stories traveled across centuries, carried by poets and sculptors, painted on vases, carved into marble, whispered to children by firelight. They remind us even now that the monsters we imagine are not only of flesh and fang, but of fear, doubt, and the trials of life. And so, as our journey through the monstrous heart of Greek mythology ends, I ask you, which of these creatures would you fear most if you walked the ancient world? Would you dare the labyrinth of the Minotaur, or stare into the eyes of Medusa? Tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and what time it is in your world as you join these legends. If you have felt the thrill of these tales, let your voice be heard. Like this story, share it with fellow seekers. And subscribe so that together we may continue to explore the endless tapestry of myth. For just as heroes rose to face their monsters, so too can we rise to face our own. Until the next tale, let the fire burn bright, and the shadows whisper of wonders yet to come.